Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dimzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, ready to get a little black and blue today? Because we get to cover the AFC North. And before we get into the specifics of the AFC North, and we're starting with the fourth most likely team by market to win this division, the general tone of today's and Wednesday's podcast for me is going to feel like I'm planting a flag and really kind of making some strong positions, when in reality, I just think this is really close. I think all four of these teams are very good. I think all four of these teams have high ceilings. I think any of these four teams could find themselves in the second week of the AFC playoffs in the final four among AFC playoff teams. I don't think any of them are that likely to win the AFC.
I was gonna say, I was gonna say the same thing. I said there's like all the teams I can envision them winning a round one playoff game.
There's no real glaring weaknesses.
Yeah,
it's really tough to
teams.
differentiate between these guys. This is some good. This is going to be some good football. I will not be surprised if a lot of them
that I could see in the title, in like the AFC title game.
Yeah, and I guess
that sort of upside.
Like there's a lot of NFL this year that I'm not like super excited to see. Like, you know, I don't really care for that game. I don't really care for that division. I don't really have any. There's no juice there. I think every AFC North game is going to freaking rock, and that has me excited. So it's going to be a fun couple of podcasts. But before we go there, I just want to pour out a little old English for our ladies in Australia. Holy crap! Was that a disappointing effort from the U.S. women's national team?
Or more, yeah.
I lost money on this. I regret getting involved at all. I obviously did not really fully recognize how significant the transition was of talent, particularly on the scoring side of the ball. I would expect there are some major shakeups in terms of management, in terms of roster composition between this one and the next major international competition. But did you have any thoughts about what went wrong for the old red, white, and blue ladies?
Yeah, just the finishing. I mean, if you go look at the stats, the XG stats, and some of the attacking numbers, we should have probably scored a little more. We got bit by the regression bug, and when that happens to you in knockout tournament and you can't finish, you get put into coin flip situations with teams you shouldn't be in coin flip situations, and sometimes a PK goes well over the top of the crossbar there, like Rapinoe's did, and some other people didn't get it done. Such is life. It's been a weird tournament. There's been a lot of, if you like underdogs, long shots, there's been some really good results, some big numbers. I've seen some pretty sharp guys get after it with some of that. So I'm not sure like what you're allowed to be mad about, because everyone's, it's like a hot button topic talking about this team for some reason. I've seen people arguing online, but like
there's a lot of mad men who
I know, and that's right.
Grave dance, and it's kind of.
I don't want to fall into that, but I did love Rapinoe's comments afterwards. And I should see the whole interview to see if there's some context. But it's like, what was your favorite memory of this? That wasn't like, hey, one last go around with the teammates, seeing some of the young ones. It was getting paid, like getting the equal pay. It was that. It was important, and that's awesome that they achieved that, but it felt like the wrong answer at the wrong time. Like you just lost in, pretty poor fashion. Like there's a different time to focus on that. So
all right.
Goofy tournament. And yeah, we're weird. It's good. It's funny too, when I proclaimed the US dead in the first game, on Twitter, and I said, congrats, Germany. That didn't work out.
Who do you want to jinx? Yeah, who do you want to jinx?
Who do I want to kill? Yeah, and that's
can you kill England? Because I don't think England's priced right.
Yeah,
especially with the red card they absorbed.
Three Lions doing it again.
Thank you.
So,
England, no, I think is the only bet I would make.
All right, from down under to the mistake on the no. I'm so used
fourth
to
choice is Pittsburgh.
I
It's
know.
Pittsburgh.
All
Kind of
right.
crazy, man.
Where the three rivers meet.
All right.
Nice
So
job.
I've made some weekly held, takes over the balance of these preview pods over all the other NFL stuff that I've done. Maybe the one of a couple of hot takes involved this team, the Steelers. And this was not something that I ever expected because, and I kind of should have seen this coming. Like, I bet a lot of Steelers last year, especially down the stretch.
Down the stretch, they were a bet on. Get caught up to quick enough.
No,
it's like, hey, this team isn't well, and also it wasn't like we never had that conversation where like, hey, Kenny Pickett is getting it, and he is a legit quarterback right now.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be betting on this team. That's not how they were winning. He still couldn't hit guys 15 yards down the field with consistency. He still wasn't doing a lot of things right, but it was like the sum of the parts. A lot of things got a little bit better at the same time, and they progressed into this team that won a lot of close games down the stretch. They had a faint glimmer of hope in Week 18. They needed a lot of help, but they got their game done, and they. I think it was the loss to the Dolphins earlier in the year that cost him the playoff spot with the tiebreak. But I mean, this was not a team that I expected to be in it at the end of the year after, what was it, 2-6 to start the year heading into the bye? And I mean, the losses to, like the Eagles got shellacked. I guess it was the biggest loss ever by margin for Tomlin, the 38-3 loss at Buffalo. Like when you're starting a rookie quarterback, or at some point early in the season, starting Trubisky, losing really bad to really good teams on the road, whatever, I can forgive that.
Yeah.
It was just some of the other coin toss games. It felt like, man, you guys you're better coached than this. It was really disappointing. So maybe the turnaround wasn't as surprising once we kind of look at it from who's the coach and the systems that have been put in place. And
so 2021 was a surprise Steelers playoff appearance. They got smushed by the Chiefs, I believe, in the 2-7. And Ben Roethlisberger retires. The Steelers used their first-round draft capital on the only quarterback who was taken in the first 2 rounds. Is that right? I believe that's right. And we all had a good old laugh because Kenny Pickett, while staying in the city of Pittsburgh, as he was a Pittsburgh local, had little tiny hands at the combine, and he wears 2 gloves, and it's not your traditional kind of makeup of a quarterback who's going to succeed, particularly one that plays in a black and blue division and outdoors in some wicked weather for a bunch of the season. So it was a pretty straightforward thing to have low expectations for Pickett as a rookie if he even got on the field. And then you combine that with the fact that a very common talking point leading into last year's Steelers campaign was, well, Matt Canada stinks, but now he's at least not burdened by having to construct his offense to what Ben Roethlisberger had left in the tank.
Yeah,
which
you're
was
only allowed to have shotgun snaps.
Yeah.
What was it? He didn't like motion. He didn't like the distraction of
he didn't like play action because he didn't like his back to the.
Yeah, he didn't like play action. So it was. There was a lot of restrictions on Matt Canada, and as hard as we were on him, the more I look at it, that's a weird transition. And then you're also starting with a bit of a raw product, even though it's not like he didn't play a million games in college. So I'm easing up on him a little. Obviously, I will be right at his throat with a pitchfork again by week 5 if I don't see things kind of turn out how they hope they turn out. But that was a weird transition, to be sure.
Yeah, and I think it was easy to be pessimistic that Canada was the answer at offensive coordinator, especially when you're like, okay, good luck getting it done with Mr. Trubisky and then Kenny Pickett, whatever he has. And you looked at the Steelers schedule and you're like, I'm not even sure where you drop Kenny Pickett in here. Like the whole middle of the schedule was just murderers row. And it's like, good Lord, what are you going to do here? And so it was easy to be a little bit bearish on the Steelers last year heading into the season. And I think a lot of those whiffs exist today. I think there's still a lot of people who are like, I'm not sold on Kenny Pickett. Like, I got a statistical profile for all of last year. It wasn't very good, especially early in the season, but that actually is, I think useful signal to tell you that he improved. Similarly with Canada, I think Canada gave you a half a season's worth of tape that he still did not get it. And I think a lot of people expected that he might have been a material change in the coaching staff in the offseason and that Tomlin would go in a different direction. But Canada retained his position. And so I think there's a little whiff in the air of 2023 Steelers that, well, Kenny Pickett's still the third best quarterback in this division, and Canada is probably the worst offensive coordinator. And for those reasons, you just really can't believe that this team's going to all of a sudden take this division by storm and win. The thing is, if you do the sum of the parts in terms of the players, there are a lot of good players on this team. And
it is a very good roster.
There are a lot of good units and a lot of strong and a lot of depth, and the players that they have drafted and developed in Pittsburgh, like it's kind of easy to just acknowledge and just let yourself fall into the fact that these guys are good at evaluating talent and they are good at getting the most out of that talent by developing their young players. The Steelers have been doing this for 20 years. Of going out and finding a guy that they think can do well in the third round. And then, oh my God, 2 years into his career, we could be talking about George Pickens as like the wide receiver 5 in the NFL. Like, that's not a crazy outcome that could happen this year. If he, carries what we saw last year and some of the highlights of his college career into this season. So it's, it's pretty obvious, at least, that this is a well-run organization, good at drafting and developing talent. And I think they have a really deep, talented team overall that has done kind of the ideal way to do an NFL team, which is to say you don't have a ton of money dedicated to your quarterback right now. You're taking some swings with the quarterback on a rookie deal, and you can retain the players that you drafted and developed because you have so much cap flexibility and so much money to put towards the TJ Watson, the Cam Haywards, and the Alex Highsmiths, and the Minka Fitzpatricks, and all these guys can get fairly compensated, and you don't have to see them walk out the door. And I think that's pretty cool, and it's worth acknowledging. And I think there are plenty of reasons to recognize the Steelers as a high floor team, independent of whatever Kenny Pickett looks like this year, independent of whatever Matt Canada's offense looks like this year. And I think for those reasons, they're a little closer to the top of this division than the market realizes. I think 5-1 is plus 550, is somewhat disrespectful.
Yeah, I'm close. I'm not as bullish as you, just because you have 2 legitimate MVP candidates in the division.
Yeah,
it'd be a lot easier for you to sell me the Steelers if they weren't in this division. And
at the same time, no question. But then you wouldn't get this price, I don't think.
No, I think I'd need like a 6 or 7 to bet them. They just have to. I get that it's a really high floor, but they have to leapfrog 2 really good quarterbacks with 2. What we're finding out is at least a pretty stable coaching staff in Cincinnati and a good coaching staff, obviously, in Baltimore. And then we haven't even got to, hey, here's a guy that was a top 10 quarterback for 3-4 years in a row and then didn't play for a long time and got a few massages, and we don't know how that. And obviously they're kind of the same story. Go look at that roster on paper. It's like, shit, if Watson's good, this is a really good team. They're probably another team that you could see winning a playoff game. That said, and then they're all in the AFC. It's not, if it'd be like, man, if this was like an NFC, the next words out of my mouth would be like, do all 4 teams make the playoffs?
It's not crazy. There's going to be some collateral damage.
Well, no, but right? In the AFC, there's 3, maybe 4 decent teams in the East. You have the West with a couple decent teams as well. 1 really good one. It's going to be hard to get multiple, much less 3. That's crazy talk. I'm just saying, if this were an NFC team, it'd be like, man, does this team finish like 3rd or 4th? And still, they're still looking at maybe making the playoffs. So
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, last year was hard to grade, and I wanted to go back a little quick before we moved on to some of the changes, because it's like you look at like just the wins and losses, be like, oh, that was a nice win week 1 there of the Bengals. Do you remember that? They coughed up the touchdown at the end. and then somehow blocked the extra point, went in overtime. Felt a little fluky. And then just, like once Pickett did see time, it didn't feel good. The week 4, they were down 4. They were down there. He threw an end zone interception in the comeback. Obviously, the just absolute ass kickings they took from the Bills and Eagles didn't feel very good going into the bye. We had some, actually the injuries really only to truthfully one man meaningfully, but that one man is quite the man and probably a perennial defensive player of the year. So losing any time for him sucks. Then some of the wins late. So they were 3-7 after 10 games, which is again, credit to Tomlin. Like, how did this team end up with the winning record? And then so they rattled off those 5 wins in 6 weeks, all of them 1-score games. And then, obviously at that point, the week's 18 game was played against an already eliminated Browns team. They played well. Obviously, the Steelers did play well. They got the win. They needed a lot of help, but it was weird, some of the transition we saw at the quarterback and what they were trying to do with the passing game, because it was clear that, I don't know, when Pickett needed to kind of make the read on a deeper route, it didn't go well. Like I said, I mean, you can go look at Alice stats. Like, a lot of the intermediate stuff was shit. He was great. There's a really good, like, just bundle of stats from the almanac, the FAO almanac on them, and it was basically kind of showing like, hey, they didn't have any yak. That's, they rated so low in yards after catch in a bunch of different ways, and it just, when a team can't go deep and can barely hit the intermediate stuff, and they're just going to go short over and over again, they were pretty effective with it. They got first downs, but it's like they were just hitting the pass and getting tackled immediately over and over, because they ranked very high in plays per drive, but the efficiency numbers to go with like actual success were very low at the same time. So it was I'm sorry, Lipscomb. Yeah, the under 7.5 sitting at 3-7.
Feeling pretty good. Pretty good. Okay, so let's go back to week 1. That was an absurd one. Like, a truly absurd one. It took, I think, I don't know, I'm not even looking at the stats. Joe Burrow threw 3 picks and got sacked 7 times, something like that. And they were still in it with an extra point to win.
They forced 5 turnovers on the Bengals that day.
5 turnovers.
That's how you beat the Bengals in overtime, guys.
5, unbelievable. But the weird things about that game, the Bengals still should have won in regulation. They didn't. They should have won in overtime. Evan McPherson missed a 29-yard field goal. He must have gotten hurt. I don't really remember exactly what happened, but Evan McPherson was automatic as a rookie. He was automatic. Guy could not miss. And he missed an extra point, and he missed a 29-yard field goal that would have given him the win in overtime. And then they're driving 3rd and 4 with 1:30 to play. They're at the Pittsburgh 38. Literally just anything but a sack, and they're going to try to McPherson out to try to win it again. Burrow gets sacked and fumbles, and the Steelers got the long snapper. About that.
Long snapper did get
I remembered something weird. Something weird happened in that one. It was the long snapper. That's right. Whatever the case was, credit to the Steelers. They never gave up. They never quit. They were 6.5 point dogs, I want to say, at home. Is that right? It was. They were meaningful dogs. It's close to 7. Jesus. So really good win for them. But that was the only high point of the entire first half of the season until they got the surprise win against the Buccaneers. Another game where you were huge dogs. You drop Kenny Pickett in the least
Bucks,
awesome time.
The Bucks had a 2-pointer to tie that game late that they missed.
Oh, I forgot about that.
They almost lost that, or I mean, it would have been tied at that point. Obviously, it's a loss.
I believe, if I remember correctly, Pickett came in not by necessity because something happened to Trubisky, but because Trubisky was not effective and they were ready to pull the trigger on the Kenny Pickett experience. But boy, oh boy, did they put him in at the worst possible time. You get to face the defenses of the Jets, the Bills, the Bucks, the Dolphins, and the Eagles. that's your first 5 starting defenses you got to play as a rookie quarterback. That's horrific way to start your career. And the fact that they kind of took all the tape through that stretch and made some tweaks in the bye week to make him a more effective guy down the stretch just speaks to the brilliance of the coaching overall. Not necessarily the coordinating as much as just the general, like, getting the most out of your players is tough, and they did it. They were super feisty against the Bengals the second time they played. They lost 37-30 in a game where their offense finally showed up. That was sort of the eye opener for me of, oh, this is a bet on team. They didn't cover that game, but it was like, if they can get to 30 against Big Lou and the Bengals, like, something's different here. There's something there. There's a there. And yeah, the rest of the way, they were an easy bet week in, week out. Market was rating them as a bottom 5 team, and they were 2.5-point dogs at Indianapolis, Andy. Never forget it. That was a get back of all the money I lost on the Raiders game. I remember Raiders Colts. that was a fun one. They were 1-point dogs at Atlanta. They won. They should have beat the Ravens week 13 as 1.5-point favorites, in my opinion. And then they finished the season with 4 straight wins, largely on the strength of their defense that had a healthy TJ Watt back. Now, they did not allow 20 points to anyone after they played the Bengals in week 10. That's crazy. That is a hell of a run. And it wasn't because they were slowing the game down. It wasn't number of snaps. It was just the defense is extremely well coordinated. They kicked absolutely.
Little Colin, I mean, I do want to give them credit. The defense, we've seen this year in and year out through changes, many, many years of the Tomlin regime. He's gotten the defense sorted out. Sometimes a little quicker than this. And I do want to give the defense credit, but it also coincided with a bunch of really, like, probably soft quarterback spots for them. But that's the thing. Like, you see teams play those same teams and give up points to, whatever we were getting Ritter at that point from the Falcons and on the road. Carolina was sneaky with some people. Like, you still have to go out there and do it. So a lot of credit to Tomlin, that defense, and obviously getting Watt back made a big difference. But that's kind of what they needed because the offense wasn't exactly prolific. Yeah. If anything, a little, much less consistent when they were. You'd see little flashes, but we couldn't get it consistently. So you needed that defense to show up if you wanted to get into the playoff race. They did. Obviously didn't quite get there, but probably a successful season against a kind of a tough schedule, all in all, if you consider the teams they played and the division they play in. And, it's kind of running it back with, truthfully, most of the changes, I guess, on defense. Just the craziest part, there's probably going to be 6 of 11 spots where we're looking at a new starter. And that's basically where we're at. And then, obviously, the changes, the biggest changes are adding some offensive linemen, adding the guard from the Eagles. That was important, I guess. If you want to rebuild that left side, Broderick Jones. And it's been a long time since they drafted an offensive lineman that high. But he is definitely not starting right now. He is not winning in camp. And if you go look at Dan Moore's numbers from last year, it's not like, oh, this guy's stuck behind a pretty good player. It's a little worrisome, but we've seen this a few times with some of these big left tackles that come into the league over the past few years. It does take a little time. So for their sake, hopefully he starts to get it, but it seems a little lost from all the reports you're reading from camp so far.
I'm going to err on the side of Dan Moore took a step forward rather than Broderick Jones is not a guy. All the Steelers beat guys were kind of glowing after minicamp. They were like, Dan Moore is like, he's shown up. Like he's taking this opportunity to try to, and not going to concede that job easily. So I think it's more about how well Dan Moore is playing than Broderick Jones not being the guy yet. All that said, in the blind, I think the Steelers were probably the best money line bet last year, week in, week out. They won outright as dogs 7 times, including as let me look at the ones that they won outright as dogs. 9.5 points to Tampa, 7 to Cincy, and then a bunch that were inside of a field goal. But I think they probably were one of the better, with better return on investment teams money line across the whole NFL last year. I think the 2022 roster had pretty clear flaws and issues and holes, and overall, I like what they did to address that stuff. And kind of in keeping with the theme of they know how to evaluate talent, the guys that they let walk out the door were guys that were underperforming. Devin Bush Jr., I think, underperformed his draft capital. Miles Jack was fine last year, but not worth keeping at the price you were going to have to pay for him. They let Chase Claypool head out the door for draft capital from the Bears. That turned out to be the best trade any team made last year. And as far as I could tell you, they got effectively a first round pick for Chase Claypool. Amazing. Terrell Edmonds, I think, was a hair overrated. Cameron Sutton, I think, was a hair overrated. Arthur Mallett, Spillane, Tyson Alualu, Malik Reed, Chris Wormley, all of these guys that that are gone are not needle movers for me. So I don't really have issues with how they did self-evaluation.
No, I think the
lead.
needle mover for me, Drew, is just it's volume. Like you lost.
Sure, it's a lot of guys.
You lost somebody at like basically everywhere. You lost somebody right up front. You lost inside linebackers. You lost
3 linebackers.
You lost a safety. You lost kind of you basically lost kind of both ends of your cornerback room. The Joey Porter pick, which I believe that was the pick they got for in the trade with the Bears. So that turned out all right. We'll see. You can read this most places. The Patrick Peterson thing maybe doesn't fit as well as where he was in Minnesota, although he probably doesn't fit in.
Are you sure about that?
He doesn't fit in Minnesota anymore.
Okay, so a couple thoughts here. So I like the move to bring in the guard Isaac Seumalo. I think I'm saying that right. Seumalo. Nice move. He's good. I like Elandon Roberts. He's an upgrade at linebacker over the guys you let leave. I like Marcus Golden as a situational pass rusher a lot. I think he has a nice role. And I think the guys that you elevated into the positions that you vacated are as good, if not better, than the guys that left. So this defense should be just fine. And the Patrick Peterson conversation is interesting because he falls into the category of a guy that has just, he's come up with a way to have a second act here. Like, I'm not telling you he was an all-pro last year. He was not. But he was definitely above replacement level at cornerback for the Vikings. And apparently they're going to utilize him as a nickelback role this year. So they're kind of putting him in the perfect situation, I think, to use his smarts to be an effective defender. And I think that helps the secondary overall. I think anyone you put around the core of this team is, you're just going to get production out of them because the core itself is so freaking high floor. TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, absolute all pros, no question. Minka Fitzpatrick, all pro, great on him. Alex Highsmith, well above replacement level. Interesting players from a depth standpoint. I like Larry Ogunjobi plenty. I think just the coaching alone would make a lot of these guys stand out to me as exciting prospects. And you combine it with the absolute all-star talent, that the blue chip all-star talent that's on this defense. I think this unit's going to be very good.
Yeah, I worry about Peterson and his age trying to play in this sort of defense. Minnesota played like 85% zone, and that's a really good way to like kind of hide, not only hide his weaknesses, but probably brings out some of his strengths too. Is just an older, savvy veteran. So if they try to if they have to move around because they're bringing in a rookie who's looked good in camp, Porter's looked good again. I'd like to see him in some actual live action. But we'll get that this weekend. But if they have to put Patrick Peterson outside and they're going to be playing a lot of man like they do, I'm not so sure I love that at his age. So it's basically, I worry that there is some fragility to this cornerback room. I'm hopeful. And I think the coaching staff is smart enough to get the most out of all the guys that are back there. But there's a lot of fragility with a really old guy and a rookie trying to come in and be 2/3 of that cornerback room at any given point. And I'm not super sold on some of the depth throughout the back half of the defense. Although I like all the moves they made. Like you said, there wasn't like a replacement here on the defense where it's like that's a big it's the closest I can get to is cornerback. That's why I want to harp on it. Because
sure.
The other moves they made on defense were at least lateral, if not upgrades. And if Watt's healthy and the way this coaching staff builds up and develops young players, I don't see how this isn't another good defense, if not right away, at least partway through the season.
Yeah, and I think their strength is pretty.
Like everyone said, the pretty high floor based on that and the type of offense we're going to see.
Yeah, from a personal standpoint, I have them top 10 in the league on defense. I have them the best defense in their division. Not by a ton, but the best. For me, Pittsburgh is 6, Baltimore's 13, Cleveland is 16, Cincinnati is 17. The Cleveland stands out there. Gonna hate my takes on their defense when we get there next pod. But 6th overall defense, star power and Watt. Pass rush is clear top 5 for me. DBs I have borderline top 10, mostly because of Fitzpatrick. And my only weakness is the linebacking core. And honestly, if your defensive line is as good as theirs is, and you have players like Watt and Hayward who are as good in the run stop as theirs are, then who cares if your off-ball linebackers aren't, the world's greatest tacklers. So, and they have their own drafted and developed youth that they're expecting to fill some of these roles. So, we'll see how guys like, the Nick Herbigs of the world and the Quincy Roches of the world ultimately develop under their coaching. So interesting to note that TJ Watt is being largely forgot about, I think, as a true elite defensive player, even though he's still very much in his prime. And the scheme
they're going to run, if he's healthy, like the guy just has 20 sacks in his pocket. Like feels kind of median if he's completely healthy and they decide we're not changing what the defense is partway through the season. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it is some of the injuries he's suffered over the years, but
he's 2 years removed from the defensive player of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, he was the second choice defensive player of the year. Before that, he was the third choice. He only played in 10 games last year, although considering the injury he sustained, I was kind of surprised he came back as early as he did. I thought he might have been done for the season. And not only did he come back and play well down the stretch, but he fought hard to get back out there on the field. So, I he's a disruptor in a lot of ways. I think ultimately the fact that you have that star power combined with a lot of other really good pieces as well.
Hayward, and just if you could build a defense with a bunch of replacement level players, and see you get to start with TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, and Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Yeah,
I'd probably tell you, I'll try that. There are definitely players that outside of those two that are above the replacement levels.
Yep.
I do have high hopes, obviously, every year for this defense.
Okay.
Like I said, how it meshes with what I think they're building on the offense, because they invested in the offensive line through free agency and the draft.
Yeah.
Drafted another tight end that obviously is, if you read any Steelers stuff, I don't know if there's a guy getting more hype out of the rookie class in Washington, who's also I'm trying to think what movie this was. Boondock Saints, just a friggin' huge dude. Like
that sounds like Boondock Saints.
I had that in my head earlier. He's just massive, and not only another receiving threat, especially where we've seen we can thrive with the system with Pickett so far, short to intermediate. He's also a really good blocker. They're putting this God, is this the guard? They're running more fullback sets. They have good running backs.
With the center.
Yeah. They took the backup center, and it's like they did it once.
Kendrick Green, yeah.
Kendrick Green is like playing fullback. They have good running backs. They've added more players that can block in the run game, and it's a good run scheme. It might just be like I don't know if we're getting Atlanta North here. It's like, hey, Kenny Pickett's ceiling is this, but we're really good at scheming runs. We're really good at sequencing this, and I don't know if it's just going to be a really ugly offense. If that's the case too,
yeah.
Doesn't that feel like a case where if they just do what they did last season, especially the second half of last season, and the defense plays well, and it's kind of a gross cross the street a million times offense, isn't it like hard for the market to want to have a taste for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, they won another close game.
20-17 again. God damn it.
Oh, and you look at it like, they play elite defense and they can run the ball at any given point. Like, how are they winning these close games? It's like, how are they keeping these leads in the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
But it does feel like if that's the case, and it's not this flashy, holy shit, Joe Burrow's good, holy shit, Mahomes is good, when these players take that step, holy shit, Justin Herbert's good. When they take that step, it's like, everybody wants to, pile on. But market sentiment doesn't really get excited about a team winning games like that.
No,
I think you're gonna. I mean, let's pull up
Those are fragile game states. Yeah, I think that's fine.
We'll get to the schedule in a second. I suppose we should grade this offseason a little.
Yeah, so I have the Pittsburgh offense graded 17th in the NFL. You're the fourth best offense in your division. That's the bad news. Good news is there's no real standout problem. The offensive line I have is 16th. I remember being especially out on those guys last year. Like, wow, they suck. They should have drafted an offensive lineman. Oh, this unit's terrible. They got better throughout the season, I thought. Again, good coaching and development. Interior offensive line, I have middle of the pack. That's good. You want Kenny Pickett to have time to continue to learn how to play quarterback, then you got the right guys, to help you get that accomplished. And your skill position group is good. Najee Harris had a tale of two seasons as well. He was like an absolute turd through most of the first half of the season, and then he had like a sit down with somebody at the pie, and they were like, you're gonna lose your job if you don't start trying a little harder here, buddy. Because it wasn't even it wasn't how he was used. It wasn't like a health thing. He literally was like, okay, play better. Okay, fine, I'll play better. Like that was
please try harder.
Please try harder. Okay, fine, let's do this. I don't even think it was it might have been a try thing. Who knows? Whatever the case was, that was sort of the outsider's experience. But I like the wide receiver room. It's a little thin. If something happens to Deontay Johnson or George Pickens, we're going to be sending some.
Yeah, you got Calvin Austin and Gunnar Olszewski right now. It's incredibly thin because I'm not getting. My needle isn't moving for Allen Robinson.
You know who feels like a Pittsburgh Steeler to me? Cooper Kupp. Go make a deal for Cooper Kupp. The Rams aren't winning shit this year. Go make an offer.
Oh man,
go make an offer.
Just an elite.
Didn't he fit exactly with Pickens and Deontay Johnson and helps Pickett?
He'd have 200 catches.
Yeah. It'd be awesome. Might as well bring a McVay offensive guy with him and get rid of Canada, but that's another story. The skill position group is good. It's top 10 for me. Even though it's top 10, it's third best at your division. And your low grade right now is quarterback, but again, like he's not asked to do much, and there's a realistic ceiling, a realistic step forward that could happen this year. And if that happens, then all of a sudden we're talking not about the 17th best offense. If Kenny Pickett is league average quarterback, this is now, borderline top 10 offense, I think. Compare that with the clear top 10 defense, and I think you're talking about a team that is going to surprise. and win a bunch of games and maybe win the division and definitely maybe win Mike Tomlin his elusive Coach of the Year award. All right, grade offseason grades B+.
B, yeah.
B, yeah. Nothing really fancy. Yeah, nothing really. Yeah.
You went and addressed the issues. You lost cornerbacks. You went and got cornerbacks. You lost other defenders at, up front in the middle and at linebacker. You replaced those. And honestly, a couple places I read some stuff about. It's basically like what they got at linebacker isn't. I forget how they put it, and I wish I had credit for somebody here, but basically said like this isn't as flashy. These aren't guys that are just running downhill and making blocks miss and trying to cause chaos. These guys are kind of your steady Eddie,
lunch pail guys. Yeah,
just gap security.
Yeah,
not like they're not going to get beat, and that's going to help because there was some struggle with the overall run stop last year.
Yeah, so I agree with that.
I think despite because that's what sometimes grades are great, and it's a lot of what we have to work with unless we actually had time to sit down and watch all the film.
Yeah.
100 times for every player, but sometimes that's where it helps to read some of these camp reports from the guys that know the team well and say like these guys actually might fit better. So it could be some upgrades at defense. I'm happy, and we'll just see how some of these rookies play out and where the wide receiver room ends up. Obviously, Pickett taking any steps forward is massive.
I agree with that. Let's take a look.
Who do they play?
Yeah,
this season. In the AFC.
Oh, baby. Here we go.
Who's the quarterback in that first game?
You're in the same kind of sentiment and theme that we did the NFC East last week, where we were basically like the 2022 schedules for all these teams are easy. Just recognize that. And then from there, the schedules for all these teams this year are harder. Okay. Well, the schedules for everyone in the AFC North are hard by default. Like you have 6 games against the Ravens, Browns, and Bengals. Those are going to be hard-fought games. Period. Doesn't matter, who's healthy, who's injured. In fact, Andy, what's the old saying? Throw out the records when these teams get together. Like that's
these two teams.
Yeah.
There's between a round robin of those teams, the amount of love lost is still 0.0.
There isn't a single love lost. That's true. But as far as things go, as the fact that none of these schedules are easy, this is about as good as you could have hoped for as far as just relative strength.
Especially
think this is
the team
easier.
I described, who plays sound, above average, maybe good defense, and is a boring, short West Coast kind of hybrid that runs the ball a little too often, but it works. Like, put me in 15 coin flips. Shit, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I'll probably we're not going to Paycor in Cincinnati, and
no,
likely, although it happens. San Francisco at home is kind of a bum break to start the season. North of Baltimore on the road.
If you were going to play Brock Purdy the entire schedule, when would you pick it, Andy? You'd pick it first.
Week 1.
You pick him. Yeah, you pick it week 1.
It might be Trey Lance.
It might be
Darnold. Flattering.
No, it's probably going to be Purdy, and I think honestly, like the Niners have some soul searching to do about putting Purdy up against this pass rush. Week 1.
Yeah.
Like seriously, you guys sure you want to do this for his first game speed is going to be Purdy? His first game speed is going to be against TJ Watt and the Monsters on the road. Like this is it's about as advantageous a time to face them as possible. Now, granted, the Niners are also going to have 900 other injuries, and none of those are going to have happened yet. So you are playing them at full strength.
Patrick's is asking why the Titans play every Thursday night game, because during most of the fall they need to clear the city out on the weekends for bachelor parties. So
that's correct.
They force Tennessee to Thursdays quite often. That's
TNF is also being rebranded as Thursday night football this year, so it's all Titans games.
When was it you could flex into it? How late in the season?
I don't know. I think it's early this year.
That's
yeah.
gonna be a fucking disaster.
Yeah, 10 or 12.
Some teams are gonna be
Yeah.
their asses will be incredibly chapped about that.
Yeah, Thursday night.
Early bye.
I don't know that the Pit is live against San Francisco. I don't. But I do know that they are live against Cleveland, Las Vegas, and Houston and Baltimore before their bye. So I don't know, I don't. The idea of heading into that bye with like a 1-4 or 0-5, I don't think is very realistic. Is that fair?
No, it feels like a 2-3, 3-2 an awful lot of times, and then you have 4 winnable games off the bye. It's a road game across the country, but who knows what state the Rams will be in at that point.
Yeah.
And you have your rest. You come back home for 2 in a row against a couple teams you can beat. Jacksonville and Tennessee are not pushovers, but these are home games against teams that are rated similarly. Obviously, Tennessee a little lower. Then you get Green Bay coming in, which, truthfully, if I wanted to play them, I'd want to play them early too. Not get Love, get his feet under him. But at least it's at home. That's a tough environment for a young quarterback. And then like you said, all the division ones are tough. You have 2 tough division road games. Like going 1-1 there, shake hands on that any day. Because it feels like 0-2 happens a bit. That's a tough one too. And then, some winnable ones again with Arizona, New England, Indy, before you get into the grinder. And yeah, if you do make the playoffs and you do end up a wild card, it will be a 3rd straight road game after going across to Seattle, down to Baltimore, and then what?
You're going to get out thrashed.
Yeah, a 3rd straight road game with a second-year quarterback, obviously very, very, experienced coaching staff, but that's a tough ask. Travel for the 3rd straight week with a quarterback who's never prepped for the playoffs before, and it's a tough. That's why I think, and we'll look at the odds after this. It's a tough ask to convince me on even a long number for like AFC or Super Bowl for this team. Even bullish on this team. There's more conservative ways to attack it.
This schedule and this team, to me, again, narrative, qualitative whiffs here. So bear with me. But it is take everyone by storm, shock the world, win the North, and then Kenny Pickett playoff stinker is coming. All right. Yeah.
Buffalo -7.
Yeah, exactly. If they're in as a wild card, then you're laying the points with whoever the home favorite is. Buffalo, Cincy, KC, whoever. If they are home, they're going to be home pick'ems probably against the best of the wild card teams, you would assume. So could be a fun handicap if you're talking like Chargers, fun handicap, Dolphins, fun handicap. So if they're the AFC North champs, that'll set up a really interesting way to bet the farm against them in Kenny Pickett's first playoff start.
Especially if you can make some money on them throughout the season and then bring it all back and turn.
Yeah. It'd be beautiful. It'd be a beautiful 1-2 punch.
Look at those odds.
Well, two more real quick notes on schedule for you. Okay. There is for a team that is centrally located and plays in a really tight geographic division. Somehow they have a bunch of travel disadvantage this year, which is a little bit weird. I don't think the Steelers ever really have travel disadvantage because of their schedule. I mean, because of their division, but it's going to be tough going at Vegas, at Houston, and then you have to then make another pretty quick trip thereafter to LA for the Rams game. Granted, if your worst travel disadvantage all season is at the Rams, then I'm still pretty bullish on you winning that game. And then, as you mentioned, 3 of the last 4 on the road: at Indy, at Seattle, at Baltimore, and
I'd like to downgrade that travel disadvantage a little because it's coming off the bye, right?
Because it's coming off the bye, yeah, but it still is. That's a second trip. Yeah, second trip west in a matter of a few weeks, which is where I want to poke the organization a little on this. Like, you couldn't have asked for like Rams Vegas back to back. You couldn't have asked for like, Seattle Vegas, Seattle Rams back to back. Like there was there was a way to do this a little bit more elegantly than flying across the country 1, 2, 3 times, including once in the last 2 weeks of the season, which is not ideal. So, balanced schedule for rest, not a lot of situational stuff.
Yeah, it does take one of these where they draw certain divisions for them because they're one of these central-rated teams, and as Birdie's joking about here, like all 3 of their division games are like 40-mile drives.
40 miles, yeah.
Like,
so
just
close. Yeah.
Just pop over to Cleveland, pop over to Cincy.
Yeah,
Baltimore's probably the furthest from them.
Yeah, so if I knew who my opponents were, Baltimore is definitely within division. Yeah, if I knew who my opponents were, I would have would have asked for back-to-backs and stayed out west. that would have been fun. Come out to the coast, build a little team chemistry. Like, what are we doing? So I don't know. Let's go for the odds here, because as much as I want to be bullish on the Steelers, I guffaw at Super Bowl 45-1. It is not a fair price. AFC 25-1. This team beating elite passing offenses twice in the playoffs, to me, is a stretch. So I think AFC titles not realistically in the cards, and a successful season for them is get yourself into the playoffs and pick its stinker out of the way. Like, that's kind of success for this team for this year, in my opinion. AFC North, I think, is a bettable number in the 5-1 range. Make the playoffs, yes, is a bettable number in the plus 128 range. But I will argue till I am blue in the face that a more effective way to capture upside with the Steelers is to bet Mike Tomlin Coach of the Year. Now, if you want to split stake a little bit and take some playoffs and take some Tomlin, because Tomlin has, Coach of the Year is a crowded market. There are some really good coaches that are going to have some really solid narratives. I understand. But I think with the perception that they're going to finish 4th and the tightness of this division and not much has to go right, and all of a sudden not much has to go wrong for some of the other teams, injury wise, chemistry wise, offensive coordinator, offensive scheme questions, defensive personnel questions, quarterback, availability questions. All of this is swirling for your opponents. So if you can win this division and shock the world, then Tomlin Coach of the Year to me is a really, really strong case. It's really good. And he's like 20-1. He was 30-1 at one point at Circle, by the way. I don't know if you saw that, but that was a while ago.
It's a big number. I think it's hard to win that if you don't win the division. So it's a parlay of things going right for this team and the Bengals and Ravens and honestly Cleveland as well playing poorly. So like 20-1 doesn't do it for me on Tomlin. If there were 25-30s, I'd hear it out. And I like the case. It's just I'd want a slightly bigger number because you're basically parlaying so many things within this division. And it feels like the Steelers part is the easiest because they have such a high floor based on what they are.
So it
does seem like they don't have to take this huge step forward. A big part of what it would take to get this over the top would be a little bit of a downswing, bad injury luck, bad, just anything luck for a couple other teams, and Watson never just getting his feet because being a 10-7 team that gets a wild card, I don't know if that does it for me.
So here's the thing.
People just like Tomlin's been doing this since forever.
And he's never won.
No, but he's been just getting slightly winning records. Like,
so my take, there is a little bit of a needle to thread if they are a wild card team for him, for sure. Like for me, if you're telling me that true fair price, fair probability of the Steelers winning the North is somewhere in the 20% range, which I think is conservative. For me, it's closer to 25%. If that's the case, then is he in the conversation of finalists? 100%. And it's kind of now shades of gray narrative stuff that gets him over the line because he's never won. And that this is all conditional that there's no other runaway candidate. The needle thread on Tomlin wild card coach of the year is there's a realistic chance that there's just not another good candidate.
I was gonna say, like, you need the other candidates. Like, in that case, if they don't win the division, you're also parlaying, hey, the Lions are good enough. Some of the Cowboys are not good enough. Some of these other chalky names, they can't be good. So I feel like I need 30, which if it was there, I like it. I prefer. I know we say this, and we said this in our kind of our futures episode in the offseason, where if I'm going to tie up money for this long, I want it to be it has to be a
bigger number,
a bigger number of nice payout. But I really just want to bet to make the playoffs with this team, because it's a the team, everything about it it's got this conservative vibe, and it feels like I should just be betting them conservatively, and getting a plus number on what I think they have a really good shot at, like 9-10 wins with the schedule and where I think this team is at. And just I'd make that a little closer, like 55% than where it is, to make the playoffs.
No, you're getting plus money.
Yeah. No, I like that one quite a bit. That's where I'm at.
Okay. That's realistic. I don't think I thought, and I was close to pulling the trigger on TJ Watt, DPOY, but I kind of cooled my jets on that a little. There's
still enough respect on the name, but the number's not great.
Right. DPOY market has actually been moving a little bit lately. You don't know if you saw this. Now I got to check some prices. I'm not sure who's getting bet.
So they're just
Parsons.
They're just increasing the hold.
No, it's going the other way.
Oh,
yeah,
take that.
They're all going up.
Well, I wonder if
it's weird.
You wonder if in a futures book where they have a considerably high hold like that, they ever just loosen it a little. Like, hey, we haven't taken a bet in this market for like 2 weeks.
They're just reallocating risk and deciding to make some numbers bigger.
Just drop it 5% and reallocate a couple numbers of some guys that have been taking money in years past.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get some bites.
Eventually we'll do an entire awards episode. And at that point, I'll give you commentary on where these opened with the big limits and what got bet and why. But right now I'm just curious to look into that and try to figure it out. Aiden Hutchinson is plus 1250. What?
Took some nice strides last year. That's way too short.
What? There's no way he should be in the conversation with he shouldn't be in the conversation with the Chris Joneses at 24.
True.
Wow.
It's
weird.
It's an awards market. There's places with Justin Fields in single digits.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay.
Range of outcomes for me is anywhere between 9 and 10 wins.
Yeah, very unlikely for me to see this team. You like a tight band. I get it. Very unlikely for me to see this team winning more than one playoff game. I think that stage of elimination, wild card weekend. You ready to go find that prop? Because that's an even better one than make the playoffs.
In the chat.
Oh, they did? What did we got?
325, which
that's even better. I mean, stage of elimination. This is the kind of team you swing on for that. These guys and the Falcons, like, the writing is on the wall. Like,
you
both
could be
teams are
getting
going to
the
do
Bills
great
as a 400 favorite at plus 325 in that game. I like that.
That's better than winning the North at 5-1 for sure. Higher EV. Good one.
I think the only problem would be that is if somebody did want to put a whole bundle down, I feel like the stage of elimination bet limits are a bit lower than
they probably
the divisional, and they don't exist everywhere. But
yeah, all right,
yeah, I like that.
Okay,
betting plan is.
I guess. Well, let me ask you.
Sneak.
Yeah, is this the year that I look stupid by saying the Steelers are underrated and Mike Tomlin finally finishes under 500?
I mean, it looked like you were last year after 10 games.
Yeah. Is there a step backwards by Kenny Pickett this year and Matt Canada doesn't have the goods and this team just can't get to 17 points to win games 17-14?
It's a realistic possibility, but the defense still keeps them in it. And I think they have a good stable of running backs and tight ends. You have at least 2 good wide receivers. Like there's enough skill around it to, as long as he doesn't go full wins and just start giving games away. We did see that a little, but I liked the comments as much as I didn't like Pickett. I try to keep an open mind. I liked his comments about some late interceptions he threw, and he's like, "Man, we're down by 2 scores. Well, you want me to get conservative there?" He's like, we get, he didn't, I'm paraphrasing, but basically like, is it worse to lose by 3 or 2 with no chance to win? Like I like where his head's at. If he can make strides with Canada, I'm excited to bet on this team.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Gonna have our chances early. You think they are actually dogs week 3 in the Raiders home opener? On Sunday Night Football. Weirdest Sunday Night Football pick of all. Actually, you know what? I gotta say this. I saw that and I was like, this is dumb. And I looked at the schedule for week 3. Week 3 is bad. The NFL is doing this thing where they know everybody's just going to tune in early in the season. So there are some week 2, week 3, week 4. They're going to test us as football fans. There is some trash those weeks. And I don't even know if Steelers Raiders is not the best game that week. There's some bad ones.
Your Monday nighter is Rams Bengals.
The rematch of the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and it's unwatchable.
I think there's a double Monday night that day.
Oh yeah,
Eagles, Bucks, Rams, Bengals. There's like a couple good teams and a couple teams that used to be good,
and the good teams aren't playing each other, sadly.
So, no. All right. Should we put a bow on a steel bow on this, a steel curtain on this, and call it and get over to?
Yeah, I think so. Betting plan for me is Mike Tomlin coach of the year, and I'm going to say it 900 times between now and the end of this season on this podcast if they are winning games. So let's go. Here we go.
One last point on that. It just feels like, remember how Carroll just got no credit whatsoever for anything last year?
Yes, I do.
Sometimes it just sucks that you've been around so long and done it so long.
That's a really fair point.
It has to, like, that narrative has to be incepted into the media at a high level. Is how has this guy never won this award until it turns into the lifetime achievement award.
He's never even gotten votes, Andy.
No, he's Russell Wilson, man.
I don't actually know. I don't know if it's true that he never got votes. I'm just making shit up at this point to help my case.
I'm sure he has.
Welcome to the deep dive. Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. And Andy, you want to talk about big deltas from season to season? The biggest delta for me of teams that I was excited to do a podcast for relative to last year is the Browns. I did not want to talk about this team in any capacity when we did our previews last year, and I'm excited to talk about them now.
I believe last year's show, the word "sex pest" made an appearance. So, before we do get in the Browns, I do want to mention it is the 7th, and leagues are starting to form. We are running a free Survivor League. It's just on Run Your Pool. Everybody's used to, everyone here's done a fucking league over there, guys. You know how to use Run Your Pool. There's no cost. It's free. And if you are the longest lasting winner of the, Survivor League, just take it to the Super Bowl. Send you to Vegas next January, February. So there's a link in the YouTube description. There's a link in the show description on the podcast. Join that. It is don't ask for much. It's a nice way to support the show as they are a sponsor of some of our products, and it literally doesn't cost you anything. And I wanted to bring it up on this one instead of Pittsburgh because of this is a very fun week 1 matchups to talk about, and not because I forgot to do it earlier in the show, guys. So for no further ado, Cleveland.
Yeah. I think for the 2022 recap, we can keep this a little bit brief, but I don't think any of us wanted to see the Browns have a happy ending to last season. I think we were all pretty satisfied. Yeah. We were all pretty satisfied with the way their season ended. We didn't need to see this team finish in glory. But I didn't expect what we got.
You're really rubbing this.
I didn't expect what we got, which was, Deshaun Watson kind of exposed his ass and did not play well on the football field. Andy, would you be surprised to know that Deshaun Watson was bottom 2 in EPA per play among quarterbacks who retain their jobs and are starting? Actually, excuse me, he's bottom 1 of quarterbacks that retain their jobs and will be starting this year. He is bottom 2 in terms of quarterbacks that have a starting job from last year. The other guy is Baker Mayfield, who another former Brown, ironically. But
weird. I don't want to go through a lot of the games. I mean, they had some weird ones. Obviously, we already talked about the Jets when we did them. You had the onside kick Flacco game. You had some missed kicks late. You lost to Bailey Zappi. You lost a close one on a blocked field goal at the end. I believe it was a pretty long field goal. Eliminated in week 16 when Watson was under center. But this was well within our, I think we did one of those, hey, what's our percentages of this, and this? And just Deshaun Watson coming in and not being good because he's been rusty. He didn't get the full regiment of camp and training with the team and all this other stuff. Like him not looking good is high probability. And I think it makes, obviously it was always going to make this year hard unless we really, really saw him just flourish. Like we needed him to either flourish or retire, I guess, because anything in between we would have to attribute to such a small sample size. And
sure,
he was rusty. One of those games was played in really, really, really poor weather conditions.
Correct.
Is that's a sixth of your total season was played under completely unplayable conditions. I mean, he wasn't good. He looked rusty as shit. He looked bad at times, but it's really hard to take that tiny sample size and be like, he's never good again. It's not 35. He's not someone who's, had major injury issues over the past year or two. He hasn't been fucking playing. How are you going to do that? So, I mean, there's so much runway to be bullish on Deshaun Watson. We still have to see it, though. We still got to see it. And, it's always going to sit in the back of your mind as far as, man, I watched those last few games. It was rough. What if he isn't good? Because, I mean, this is another one too. When you do your player grades, and I'm doing my evaluations of positional groups, it's like this is a good product. Like this is a pretty good team on paper. They have players where they need them. It's not perfect, but it's definitely well above average. And they're kind of in the same boat as Denver. It's like, hey, you have a really expensive quarterback, and you kind of need him to fucking figure it out this year. So. I don't know if there's a lot. Every team obviously is very, very heavily predicated on how their quarterback plays. But man, there aren't a lot of teams that need it as bad as like the Clevelands and the Denvers of the world who are so tied to this. And it's not like, hey, we have a some rookie deal and
we don't have a plan B here.
There's no plan D. And yes, again, the run defense, they did struggle against the run. There were some issues there. I like some of the backfilling they did this year. But yeah, it's kind of just comes down to one thing for me, man.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't even need me to go on and on about this, but if you look at the running backs don't matter scatter plot of quarterbacks and you lower your quarterback play threshold to like 150 or so, it's jarring to see Deshaun Watson's name in a cluster with Carson Wentz and Joe Flacco and Davis Mills and Zach Wilson and Baker Mayfield and Mike White and below Cooper Rush. Like, this shouldn't be where he is on this plot. It doesn't make sense. We saw 4 seasons of Deshaun Watson, one where he was a clear Rookie of the Year candidate despite only starting 6 games, and then 3 where he was consistently delivering at the NFL level, 2 where he was a double-digit winner of games, and 1 which was his best season, but they only won 4 games in Houston due to roster mismanagement by Bill O'Brien. Now, the consistency that you saw from him in those 3 seasons made it very, very, very understandable as to why why Cleveland would take the leap that they did, give the guy the guaranteed money he got, and tie their franchise to the Sex Pest, as Andy coined him last year. That's Andy's name, not mine. But I definitely am concerned for more reasons than just what we saw on the field last year, because the game has evolved so freaking fast since Pat Mahomes has come into the NFL. Like, defense is just not coordinated the same way, and it's gotten so much more complex, so much more effective at stopping the deep shot. And I don't have enough of a ground truth thing that says Deshaun Watson can do the easy stuff, can cross the street 500 times on the way to the end zone type of stuff that Mahomes has shown he can do, which makes me nervous that even with the exact same system and weapons that he had and succeeded with in Houston, would that work in today's NFL? And my answer is maybe, maybe not. And then when you combine that with, well, how about with what Stefanski wants to do? Because there is a pretty obvious oil and water situation there in terms of Stefanski's ideal, way to deploy offense, the strength of the team being the running back and the run blocking, and what Watson wants to do, which is, be kind of the, early pass early and often, take some shots downfield, hold on to the ball too long. And, I see potential for a misfit here between the best of what Deshaun Watson can do, the way defenses currently play, scheme defense, and the way that Stefanski would want to get things done. And so enough potential, only 2 of these things have to happen for Cleveland to underwhelm offensively this year. And there's lots of those. And it's enough for me to just be very buyer beware about them overall at their current market rating. And enough for me not to be sad if I am on the sidelines and the bandwagon drives right away from us, right down the street to an AFC North title, because this is become a pretty popular team to put your flag in that they're going to be surprised to the good this year. And when you look at the roster, you look at all the other strengths, and you look at some of the blue chip players they have, I get it. But I need to see it for myself, and I'm not going to pay to see it. I'm not betting against it, but this is a team that just screams, wait and see it first.
Yeah, at the current prices, it's awful hard to get excited. And obviously, last year didn't give us a super good glimpse into what we're going to get going forward. But there was spots where we didn't think they were going to struggle, and they did struggle, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And then not knowing what we're going to get from the most important position on the field. And like you said, the little bit of a push and pull in what this offense should or could, or who, the main forces that are driving it, what they want it to be. It's enough uncertainty where I'm not excited about Cleveland at the current prices. Now, I know some people got in on some better prices on Cleveland, and I certainly can't fault them for thinking this is a team with a lot of upside. Definitely has the upside to win in the playoffs. I mean, this is not an unexperienced coaching staff now. Stefanski was with Minnesota. He was a coach on a team that showed some success. He's been to that was 2 years ago. They played in a playoff game, won the playoff game, been to the first playoff win since God knows when.
Almost beat the Chiefs.
Yeah,
they were right there.
And then obviously Watson has, he's been there, done that. So if this team plays well enough to get to the playoffs, it's kind of like the opposite of what we said about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has this high floor and they will make the playoffs, but boy, is it hard to see Kenny Pickett beating the best of the best in the AFC week in, week out for a couple weeks, especially on the road. Whereas Cleveland, if things go right enough where they're in the playoffs, or, God willing, and the creek don't rise, win this division, this is a team that you don't want to be playing.
No.
I would, hey, this is a shit. There's another team with a good quarterback now. Like there's like 3 of them in this division. This sucks. I am the Bills, I'm the Chiefs, I'm the resurgent healthy Dolphins. Like I'm a team this is supposed to be my year. It sucks if you're playing Cleveland rather than some of the level of like wild cards that you've had to face the last couple of years. If they reach their full potential. So I think it's a different kind of bet if you are heavy and excited about this Browns team this year. Like it's not the conservative bet I went over with where I'm at with Pittsburgh. It's more of this team to win the AFC at a price, especially if they flounder at any point and you get a better price, or if you just find an off market number, who knows, maybe you already bet on them. Like it's a little, I think you go a little more, further down the risk profile for this one.
I think you're onto something there. And we're jumping way ahead here, but range of outcomes is like win the Super Bowl or Kevin Stefanski's first coach fired. Like this is probably the biggest in the NFL. Am I forgetting something? I'm probably forgetting.
What was the team I just did that was like 4 wins and 12 wins?
Was it Falcons?
I think that might have been a pre-recorded one for next week.
Maybe the Falcons. I don't remember, but
this.
Yeah, they do. This feels like the biggest range of outcomes of any team in the NFL. And I think finding a way to, whatever your feelings are one way or the other, finding a way to get a big payday out of it is probably the right angle. I don't have anything else to say about 2022 other than good job coaching Jacoby Brissett to what you got out of him. There were lots of weeks where I came out of watching the tape on the Browns and looked at the numbers in the Browns and said, shit, man, they didn't need Watson. They got Jacoby Brissett. It's like, that's stupid. But the fact that the coaching staff elevated that level of player is noteworthy, I think. And maybe it kind of gives you a little bit of hope that they can find reshape their offense into Deshaun Watson's skill set specifically. And I think that's, if you want to tack your hope onto that particular narrative, then I'm not here.
You trade, and that's what bothers me about like maybe the front office or the combination, because it's never just one man making all the decisions, except maybe in Dallas. It's usually a bunch of people combining their opinions and coming to some sort of agreement. And, obviously somebody has to overrule if it comes down to it. But if you're going to give up like 7 draft picks combined for, the Watson and Cooper over the course of that, those 2 trades, Cooper, I thought was such a good, I think it was basically a 5th. They ended up, but still they gave up a lot of draft picks for a wide receiver and a quarterback. If you still want to be this grinded out run first team, why'd you go and do all that?
Yeah.
Just tell Baker Mayfield not to throw as much.
Yeah.
Just chill and keep Brissett. So I'm very curious to see what the offensive philosophy is. Obviously, we got to see them the other day in the Hall of Fame game. Didn't see really didn't even see the second string quarterback. I mean, Kellen Mond, that's my takeaway. Like he should go find a different team to be on the practice squad for, I guess. He didn't that combination of him and DTR playing well, he's probably done. But other than that, we didn't get to see anything from the Browns yet. So hopefully we do see a little bit of maybe some Watson game 2 or 3. I'm not so sure that happens, but if I were Cleveland, I mean, injuries always a risk. You can get injured walking down the street. But I'd get him in some game time.
Yeah, get a bit of some confidence. Now, what you saw, especially to the end of last year, was not good. His first game back against the Texans was a win, but he was awful. They went on to, I guess they covered that game. They were not competitive against Cincinnati. They were not competitive against Pittsburgh. So 2 of your 3 division games, you were, just a complete, dud. You got a good win against Baltimore, but that was Baltimore replacement quarterback, not Lamar Jackson. Congratulations. You beat Carson Wentz and the Washington Commanders and knocked them out of the playoffs. That was kind of the high point of their season, which is sad. I will say 2 more things about 2022. One is a good thing. One is a bad thing. the good thing is they did self-evaluation and recognized that they did not have a defensive coordinator that works in today's NFL. Joe Woods consistently, in my opinion, did not get the sum of the parts, let alone more than the sum of the parts out of this defense.
So what was on paper compared to the product that happened on the field?
It never matched. It never got there. Never. They have a lot of high-end draft capital in this defense. They have a blue chip stud in Myles Garrett, who's a top 5 player in the league. And they have guys who have performed well on other teams in the secondary. What the hell? What the hell was going on? How did you underachieve with this group? It was, scheme questions, scheme fit stuff, I'm sure. But recognizing that and moving on, I thought was a good sign. The other kind of bad thing, I think, is the one thing that really stuck with me about the Deshaun Watson cycle was he kind of tacked into his worst self about taking sacks, I thought. And there are very few things where you can take strength and make it a weakness or whatever, but like it felt criminal to have a top 5 offensive line that was healthy and still have a guy that found his way into pressure and sacks and game stopping stuff. Drive stopping stuff, game changing stuff. It felt like was happening pretty regularly with them on offense. And to the degree that is just part of his DNA and not, something that can be schemed or coached around, I think is still in the back of my head as an issue. So let's move into the offseason where we saw somehow, some way, this team put their free agency dollars to work. I do not understand how they can continue to compile talented players, but they did, and it was all on the defensive side of the ball. Zadarius Smith ad solid, Tomlinson ad solid, Okoronkwo
I'm not
ad,
so sure they
solid.
They played together.
Rodney McLeod ad good, Juan Thornhill ad good, and yeah, I mean just the fact that this was the the major. Their major investment was on the defensive side of the ball, combined with the changing of the scheme is I think noteworthy. The guys that they let walk out the door, and Jacoby Brissett, no big deal. Taven Bryan didn't really move the needle for me. And then, a bunch of guys that did not live up to what you were paying them, in the likes of John Johnson and Jadeveon Clowney and Deion Jones and Ronnie Harrison. So
have you watched the video today? So maybe it's not from today. Who knows with fucking Twitter and the For You sharing me shit from who knows when. But there's a Merrill Hodge video from when Jadeveon Clowney was in his draft cycle. Basically said this guy's gonna suck. Like he's so matter of fact about it too. He's like, he's like a high end athlete, but he isn't any good at football. Like he's just a freak who's like beating up on less athletic players because it's college. It's like he's not going to be good in the NFL. Like, and he went through some pretty salient points about it, and it looks really prescient right now, obviously. But yeah, that was probably an upgrade, especially for the cost. And then Juan Thornhill is for sure an upgrade.
Yeah, and you let Reggie Ragland walk out the door. That was an experiment that never had really worked out. You let Greedy Williams walk out the door. That was an experiment that never worked out. The John Johnson thing really annoyed me because like that guy's good. He's now the Rams signed him today. Actually, he's the Rams' second best player on defense. They signed him today. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the moves you made from a personal standpoint are good, and the one that really stands out is Zadarius Smith because the Clowney Garrett synergy never really materialized. The idea was you get a second guy on this line. You can't afford to double Garrett anymore. He's going to open up, the entire kind of playmaking ability of your defense. And it never materialized. I think Zadarius Smith has a higher likelihood of doing that, but he's also still a guy that, might be on the wrong side of the aging curve. It's possible. So it's, there's, I like the moves ultimately, but, I think people have kind of gotten a little bit away from, a little disconnected from reality about how much they like this defensive line, how much they like this defense, because there's still a number of guys on this on this depth chart that I don't really think play up to their draft capital and or their compensation. So
yeah, and like you said, the Darius Smith, obviously we saw it last year, still has something in the tank, and they did struggle stopping the run at times. They added a bunch of guys to the front. They not only Dalvin Tomlinson is a good spot, but Obo Akranwa,
yeah,
Akradquan. I'm so bad.
Akarangwo, yeah,
Akranwo. Obo. I just call him Obo too. But and they added like 3 or 4 pieces D tackle depth. Like they're determined to fix what kind of was wrong. So honestly, like kind of underrated too is Josh Dobbs. You can do a lot worse for a backup quarterback. I think they're in a good spot, having lost Jacoby Brissett and being able to backfill there. So
yeah,
and then the filling in the wide receiver room a little.
Okay, so let's get to the meat. Let's get to the meat of these teams.
I'm not a huge like Elijah Moore guy. I don't know. It's good, but it's not.
Well, I was gonna go and recap and then ask you about that specifically. So basically grading this roster for starters, I have you 9th. So you're a top 10 team on paper. That's cool. Your strength on your defense, I have 16th. Largely because there are some weaknesses in the front 7, although I have your pass rush rated top 10. You have your defensive backs rated 18th. So there's a little bit of a stars and scrubs whiff to this defense, I think, because there are a couple players that I just don't know if they're really contributing. The offense I have ranked 8th. I have your offensive line top 10, interior offensive line top 10, skill position group top 5 for me. Which was kind of surprising because I initially expected them to be a little underrated. And
Chubb probably brings that up.
Chubb brings it way up. There's just not like in the skill position group, everybody you're starting, there's just not really like a really questionable player. Even Elijah Moore, I don't have especially high grade on, but if he's your slot guy, that's fine. Cooper and Peoples-Jones is a good 1-2 combo wide receiver. Njoku is a fine skill position guy at tight end. Chubb is elite, obviously, as a running back, maybe the best we have. And now he's going to get the ball more because you don't have Hunt there. A little bit thin on the skill position replacement players, but whatever. And I think, so I think on paper, the recipe is this team should win double-digit games. There's really the only thing that would stop them is if there is a misfit between coaching and personnel for whatever reason.
And basically what we're going to get to eventually, and it's a little easier to stomach now that everybody has an extra game, but we're going to say this about all 4 teams. Like all 4 teams winning like 10, 11 games just doesn't feel all that likely. Okay, everybody ran the table and then round robined with the division. They're all 12 winners or whatever that comes out to. 15. It does kind of come down to you still have to play a very, very tough divisional schedule. That can drag you down a little. But yeah, on paper, outside of a little bit of unknown at, how far is the distance between quarterback and the next position as far as importance?
So here's the question. Here's the specific question I had for you. I wondered that too, but I think that the market has gone a little far in weighting at 75 quarterback, 25 other, something along those lines.
That's a bit much.
And I think when Watson and Hopkins were together specifically, like that was such good synergy. Like those guys really, really like Hopkins really, I think, and I guess he was only there for 2 of the 3 years, and Watson did it with, spare parts his 3rd year in Houston.
Brandon Cooks.
But yeah, I think I wonder if you just had sort of the right mix of players there for him to really succeed. And I don't know if Cooper's that kind of guy. I don't know if Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore. I don't I can't really ever remember being like, oh man, Watson is vibing with that slot receiver. Like they're just cooking right now. It's never really kind of been something I've seen.
Yeah, you don't have a top 10 receiver on this team. Like and I know this is maybe silly to use some of this, but I like to look at some of the sites that actually do a good job of putting together fantasy kind of projections just to kind of see where they're sitting at, especially compared to some of the betting markets too. And it's just like your number one wide receiver at a lot of places, about a 900-yard guy. And he's good. I mean, and there's not a huge drop off. Like Elijah Moore's still probably a top 50 guy, but it's not, it's not overwhelming. It's not Jefferson. It's not, what we have in Cincinnati up there. It's certainly not what you have in Buffalo. It's not what you even have with that tight end in Kansas City. Like, you don't have that takeover guy right now. We don't think. I don't know. There's still some upside for Cooper here with a viable quarterback at this point. So I don't know. Like, it'll be interesting to see. And then also it could just be, we're not actually going to ask that much of Deshaun Watson. He's going to learn to be okay with that. And we're still going to be one of these elite running teams at times as well.
I have Cooper at the very tail end of the kind of the tier that ends top 15. Right?
Yeah.
There's some wide receiver twos in there, like T. Higgins in your division.
Yeah, you're Keenan Allen, you're Calvin Ridley.
Yeah. Basically. Yeah. I have Keenan Allen a little lower, but yeah, you're kind of right on the bubble of like elite wide receiver one, truly elite wide receiver twos, with your best wide receiver. Yeah. Interesting.
Off-season grade, Drew. I'm gonna give him. I want to give him a little bump.
I'm gonna
the defensive coordinator change.
B+ for Schwartz-Lone almost.
They needed to do something. They identified that. They went and got Jim Schwartz. He's had success everywhere. So
Zadarius Smith was a low-cost swing. Tomlinson was a low-cost swing. Okoronkwo was a low-cost swing.
Yeah, they put together some guys that
Schwartz was a guy that can get the most out of these guys. Maybe.
Yeah, it fits into what Schwartz has done. You give him these pass rushers. You let him go. I think we can have some success there. So solid B, just because of the coaching change, I think.
Yeah, I'll give him a B+. Like I don't know what else I would have done.
Well, at the coaching change in it and saying we're getting Jim Schwartz, plus we're getting him some defensive linemen to go with it.
Yeah,
like that in combination, doing one and not the other, doesn't move the needle as much. Obviously, adding Elijah Moore is a good thing. That should help round out that offensive skill position room. Right.
Wow, worst run defense in the league last year by EPA per play.
It was.
Oof. Bottom, they were 25th in EPA per play overall. These are not glorious numbers for that unit. So this could be one of those where I think them and the Falcons are probably in the competition for the potential upswing the most from year over year in terms of defensive performance. And maybe the 1 weak link is there are still some secondary pieces that who knows if they can stay healthy. They're actually good.
And with that, because I think this team has AFC title game upside, winning this division upside, it's the opposite of what we said about Tomlin. Like Stefanski just won the award. Like what if he goes from what they have 7 wins?
Yes, 7-10,
you
fourth
go
in the
from
division
like
last year.
7 to 12, 7 to 13, something, a big jump like that. Usually that's plenty, but it's like, I would just give this guy an award for making the playoffs a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that plays against him a little. Do you want anything else before we look at who they play?
I have Tomlin's Pro Football Reference page open.
Oh God, the picture!
That picture, unbelievable. It's still the same
like
picture.
Surprised.
It's like Stefanski has the Coach of the Year and I don't. Like, oh yeah, that's like somebody's just informed him. He's never even gotten a vote.
That's like a perfect caption contest one. People have losing records sometimes.
What? That's not a thing.
Could be.
All right. Let's look at some schedule. Yeah, let's look at some
schedule. You made this point when you talked about when would you rather play Cincinnati or when would you rather play the Niners and Purdy early on? Different reasons, but kind of the same reason. When would you rather play Cincinnati?
Yeah, week
When
one.
there's,
Week one.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
a chip chair and a chance you're playing Trevor Siemian at home.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. I obviously we're rooting for Burrow to get healthy. We like good football. We like good players. But if you're a Browns backer, that might be just kind of a little bonus for you there, because you were going to be a home dog to a very good team to start the season. And, if things go sideways in the second game, suddenly it's an 0-2 start with 2 divisional losses. It's a long uphill from there. So suddenly it could be a much easier start to the season. And then obviously if things sort out well, you're probably a pick 'em or a short favorite to Pittsburgh there. And you could, do the opposite, start 2-0, probably get a win against Tennessee, and then suddenly it's rubber meets the road. Week 4, home versus Baltimore. That's a massive early season game before the
big one.
Stupid early bye. I hate the early bye. You do get the
Cleveland and
double,
Pittsburgh got the early bye, huh?
Yeah, you get the double rest. You get the rest plus travel advantage. Getting a good San Francisco team coming across country.
That's exciting.
Curious what that total will be.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I guess as I look at the schedule, I get some of the same vibes as the Pittsburgh schedule, which is, considering that you have 2 Cincinnatis and 2 Baltimores on here, it's still not that spooky. Like, there are some soft spots here. Having Chicago, Houston back-to-back late in the season when you're trying to make a playoff push, pretty nice. Having Arizona before you get Kyler Murray back, pretty nice. Getting some of the younger quarterbacks early in the season before now they've gotten a bunch of reps, pretty nice. I think the fact that you're not playing Buffalo and the fact that you're not playing KC helps you specifically versus Cincinnati if you want to win this division, right?
Plus, that's just nice.
Yeah. No, small rest advantage outside of the coming off the bye. Small rest advantage at Cincy week 18 could be interesting and important. Like, that's getting that mini bye at the end of the season there could matter. Travel's not bad.
That's when you're the most beat up. I'd argue you maybe understated it. Getting a mini bye into a week 18 divisional, possibly huge game, is probably way more beneficial than having the mini bye in the first quarter or half of the season.
I agree with that.
Having 3 extra days for rehab, rest, and just getting ready.
Yeah,
that's actually probably pretty huge.
Sick, yeah.
I'm excited for that game already.
Yeah, me too. I guess, do you think that the week 12, week 13 at Denver and then at LA, are they going to stay west? Obviously, you had an at Seattle on here. You could have requested Seattle and LA back to back, and that would have been a little easier.
It's not like you're flying back to Boston.
No.
Denver to Cleveland's a couple hours, but would you want to? Anyone who's ever lived in the Midwest or next to one of the Great Lakes, if you just played at Denver and it's about to be December, I think I'm heading to like Long Beach, man. Why would you fly back to Cleveland? Like, that flight's probably delayed anyway. Go to LA, man. I'd want to stay west. It'll be interesting to see, because it's not like a no-brainer. It's just I think they should. Mm-hmm. That definitely helps with that situation, especially if the Rams are, as we pointed out, the Rams are very thin, especially on defense. If that's starting to fall down like the house of cards we think it might be, that could be a game where you're favored by a field goal on the road.
I dig that. That makes sense to me. Interesting that you're kind of playing a lot of cold weather late in the season, which maybe doesn't help your passing offense, but that's okay. That maybe kind of forces you into the Chubb focus, which is good. At Houston and at Rams are the 2 exceptions, I guess, but you're at such a huge advantage in those ones anyway. Maybe that's where you start to see Watson pop a little bit. I don't know.
And it is Thanksgiving week, Robert. It's at least the Sunday after Thanksgiving. You got to get your meal in with your family already and get the hell out of town then.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you what,
True.
we'll have the turkey. We'll go skiing, and then we'll go to the beach.
Pretty beneficial schedule though overall, I have to say.
I mean,
not a lot of
disadvantages.
Yeah.
The big ones might kind of be mitigated if you do end up staying out. That big bright orange at the bottom comes off, and then the Seattle one, that's just tough. You play a back-to-back, and one of them's on one of the coasts. That's just never going to be easy.
That's a great point. Considering like who you're up against, let's see. You don't really face an especially tough pass rush schedule. You don't really face an especially tough schedule of quarterbacks. So I don't know that the issues about Watson holding the ball are going to matter. I don't know that the issues about, questions in the secondary are going to matter. You kind of don't really have any excuses here. You better win 10 games.
Yeah.
They're going to be in the mix for a wild card spot, if not the division, I think.
No, it's going to come down. I think there's a non-zero chance we get to week 18 and nobody in this division has been eliminated. But I'm not saying we don't end up in a spot where only two of them make it, but we could get very late in the season before anyone's eliminated. It just feels like all these teams have such high floors, and obviously it would take probably a quarterback injury or some sort of, big cluster, an important positional group for one of these teams to really fall hard on their face. Or just maybe Watson straight up doesn't have it.
Is there a team or a matchup on here that you were excited about betting again? Like, oh yeah, look at that. I like them in this spot. I like them in that, with that blank, right? Like, do they match up well against San Francisco? Kind of, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Baltimore game, I'd like to see this pass rush. That might be a bit of a struggle if Lamar gets loose. This pass rush, some new pieces. Maybe they don't have the continuity and the communication yet, and suddenly they're losing. They're getting after him, but losing contain a bunch against a defense that's still trying to get it figured out a little. And I don't know. Yeah. I wouldn't be blitzing him a bunch either. See how that goes. So that could be a kind of a sneaky over game if the offense is humming. But I just like obviously all those divisional games in this are also good. You remember the treat that was the Lamar, the Lamar poop game from a couple years back.
Yes,
There's been so many good games in this division every year. So, all those, and it's weird how the schedule makers. I know making a schedule must be tough, but apparently there's just Tomlin's in the corner now. Apparently there's no rules about how the spacing between playing a team in your division, because they're going to bookend. You get the most distance possible between the two Cincy games. Where was it? Washington and New York played each other in like 2 straight weeks.
Washington had New York by New York last year for sure.
Yeah, it was like New York by
had
New York.
Washington by Washington, but yeah. Okay, so I kind of like them in that spot against. There's no way they're going to be pick-em-ish against the Rams by that time of the season. I find that to be very, very hard to believe. I like them. I like that under potential matchup and against at Denver. Like, ooh, that might be first to double digits wins. Yeah, interesting. Kind of upsideable type of schedule for what I can tell you. Let's look at the odds. 30-1 to win the Super Bowl, 18-1 to win the AFC. Are those juicy? Is the juice enough there, Andy, to say that the upside of this team speaks to that being realized?
Yeah, like I said, some people got to these because they were a little higher, but I mean, kind of got to put my money where my mouth is. I said I'd do it. I said I'd be a little more aggressive on this team. I don't hate this as an AFC 18-1. If I like him to win the division, I certainly would think I'd want to. If you bet them to win the AFC North at 4, around 4-1, I think you almost have to sprinkle on AFC a little. If you think this is a team that's getting a home game, possibly 2, maybe more, like with a an experienced quarterback. And, at that point, you have to assume the run game's going fine. You have to assume the defense played a lot better to get to that point. Like, this is a team I'd love to be having a ticket on deep into the playoffs. So I think, you do a little combo of Super Bowl / AFC.
Okay. Interesting. I, again, am perfectly fine not being on the bandwagon. So I will tip my cap to everyone who does get their Brown Super Bowl tickets and tweets about them as they are, making a deep run. I'm not taking a stand against them because of all the reasons we mentioned. The strength of this roster overall. I like Stefanski as a coach. I think a Stefanski firing would be wildly unjustified, but I think it's worth kind of wrapping your head around. He's like the fourth choice right now. Oh, sorry, fifth, 5, 6. He's the sixth choice right now. Ron Rivera's your favorite. Todd Bowles second favorite. McCarthy third. Josh McDaniels 4. Then Dennis Allen and Stefanski are basically a tie. Plus 950 is not enough for me to play it, though, I think. But again, like, you're kind of in a bad situation where you have a good coach, but if it doesn't work with the player that you give a guaranteed $200 million to, then that's the guy that pays the price. And it sucks, but that's what they've done. They presumably Stefanski was in on the decision, so you live with it. Win total is sitting at 9.5. The over is surprisingly plus 108. Under is minus 134. My baseline projection for this team is, or my mean. Let me see what my mean. 9.5. So not a real strong reason to bet the over. But
like I said, it's probably set where it should be. And if I'm taking anything in this team, it's not. I'm not wanting to have huge positions on this team, and that's where I think I'm more willing to take some longer numbers, just go small on Super Bowl and AFC, and kind of stay off that. It's that, or maybe like a wins ladder, but I'd rather take the big upside.
Yep, that makes sense to me. I don't see an obvious entry point in the season for when you would want to bet these guys, unless you look at sort of that stretch late. Rams, Denver, they can beat. They can definitely beat Denver. Denver, Rams, Jags, which is maybe the toughest contest. Chicago, Houston is week 12 to 16. They should go 4-1 there. They may go 5-0 if they beat the Jags. Preceding that stretch would be the time to buy Browns if you've seen enough of the synergy between Watson and Stefanski to say that the way that they've shaped this offense is really utilizing his, 95th percentile, right? But I think I'm fine letting these prices sail. Range of outcomes, I think we touched on already, but worth revisiting. This could go incredibly poorly. This could go swimmingly well. There is enough talent to support a deep playoff run. There are enough questions about the fit and the ability of Deshaun Watson to elevate from whatever he was last year, the 28th best quarterback, to something in the top 10. That you just have to acknowledge the uncertainty, I think.
Yeah, the offense has, I have a lot more confidence in saying this defense will progress with Schwartz and the additions up front than I do Deshaun Watson returns to 80% of his peak when he was with Houston. And if you don't get that, if it's just like Chubb and a bad quarterback, I don't see how you get off the ground with this team. So I do need that to happen. Yeah, the range of outcomes probably 7 to 12. It's a little bigger.
Yeah, it's a big one. You think the floor is high enough that 7 is as bad as it gets?
There's so many easy games and the coin flips, and if the defense and the run game are there, you're in so many of those coin flips anyway.
Does 7 and 10 cost Stefanski his job?
It may. I mean, the expectations were kind of high a couple of years ago. They got there. They won a game. They almost, like to your point, they almost won another game. I mean, I think the expectations are probably higher than they should be for what they did, but they have to have pretty high expectations based on what they spent on this quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay. You're not allowed to have low expectations and piss around at this point.
Does Watson have a say on Stefanski's future, and does Watson have a say on who they bring in next? Is
that something to be like, hey, let's get this guy's judgment? I know I would just be more along the lines of bringing in one of those, consultants to help me find someone that fits it well, rather than asking Deshaun Watson. No offense to him.
Okay.
Because he's a criminal.
Okay.
Speaking of criminals, did you see that they changed the rules about that? Because remember when Antonio Brown signed with the Patriots, and then it came out like, oh, this guy, his were pretty heinous too, didn't he? Like, kind of assault a trainer or something. Some of those allegations.
Yeah, that was about right. Yeah, that sounds right.
And then the Patriots are like, what the fuck, dude? You can't be on our team. So they changed that. Like, you can get a lot more trouble for not disclosing those kind of things. Because obviously he didn't tell him, oh yeah, I'm under investigation for like skeeting on a trainer when she wasn't watching or whatever the fuck it was. It was rough.
It was, yeah, it was not
obviously
great.
Antonio Brown has a storied history of, doing
not a well man,
not a well-adjusted young man right now. So,
no,
but I try to find someone who fit Deshaun Watson, but I'm not sure I'd let Deshaun Watson choose.
Okay. You think the Browns are totally done making moves? They're kind of weird.
It'd be pretty funny, Bill O'Brien.
Browns are wheeler dealers. You think they make any more moves? Try to bring in somebody to help elevate this roster? Go after
what would you do?
I would look for like a Roquan Smith type of move like the Ravens made last year. You could use that to really solidify the spine of your defense. Obviously not Roquan Smith, but somebody who's a line, a non-premium position that's not going to get compensated by a team because
another defensive piece, or if the right receiver was available for the right price.
Right receiver, yeah, sure, okay,
for sure. Said about DPJ.
Yeah, okay. I have him as a fine wide receiver too. Yeah. All right. So the way that these
Aaron Donald, like, you're kind of joking, but like that team
why not?
Team's about to have a fucking fire sale within the next 18 months.
That would move the needle for me big time.
Donald, you mentioned Donald and Garrett.
I would fire as quickly as I could possibly get my fingers on every future that they have.
That's fun. It's fun to just think about it. I don't care if the money works.
Putting Aaron Donald and Garrett on the same D line would be amazing. All right. Betting plan. Is there anything about the makeup of this team that's you can kind of carry into how do you approach betting them on a week by week basis?
I don't know, Dan, can you do me a solid and put up the schedule one more time? So you talked about entry point. That's tough too, because if it is a rough first 4 weeks, I'm not so sure we have a good grip on what this team actually is, because there's two, essentially your two toughest divisional opponents, plus a road game at the other divisional opponent, plus a game in a Tennessee team that has some things that have been your weaknesses. If this run stop for the defense isn't greatly improved, you're facing, it's a shell of a man of what he once was, but they're still going to keep pouring them at you. And you have a good coach and, at this point, a veteran quarterback. That's not some auto win. It's going to be hard to judge them off these first 4 games, I believe. I'm going to watch a lot more than I hope, but
yeah,
I don't think it's going to be like, hey, they were so close and they're about to turn the page, and that makes me excited to bet them against the Niners.
No, I know exactly what you're saying. I think the telltale is going to be the week 3. You're paying.
Yeah, you have to look good there.
You have Watson and the passing game have to look good there. Because guess what?
You have to look good.
You're not beating the Tennessee Titans on the ground. It's not happening. Chubb is going to have a miserable day. Week 3 at home against Tennessee. That offensive line is equally matched with the defensive line and the run stop of the Titans, as far as I can tell you. You have to be able to pass on Tennessee to win those games. And I think that we come out of week 3 and we either say 2022 was an aberration or the Browns are a sell. That's my thought. You can't take action on that again for than a couple more weeks because divisional games are going to be close. They're going to be wonky. They're going to be weird. You're absolutely right. The fact they have 3 of their first 4 divisional games is going to make it really, really tough to draw any conclusions about these guys unless they win all 3 of those, in which case people are going to be like, oh, see, they were the buzzy team for a reason. They're going to win the AFC North. This is happening. It's all happening. I think it's much more likely though that's going to be kind of a mixed bag of results, and you could be 1-2, you could be 0-3, you could be 3.
That's right. I hate it. I hate that stretch, and like you said, you really have to rely on playing Tennessee as like your bellwether for this early season success.
Yes.
I guess pay attention to that game. Try to draw some conclusions where you can from the 3 divisional games, and decide if you're in or out. Because
you know what? Not only
it's hard to say you're in, because if they really do look good in those spots, the numbers will be depressed as shit. They're already a buzzy team.
You get 2 things out of that Tennessee matchup, though. Is this a top 5 D line? Because if it is, they are going to absolutely wreck shit against the Tennessee O line. Okay, you're gonna know. You're gonna know
that O line has so many problems.
Okay, and is Watson passing with Stefanski's scheme fixed? You're going to know, because Tennessee's a passing funnel. That's what they want you to do it. You're not going to beat them on the ground, I don't think. So yeah, that's let's put a pin in everything Browns related and revisit it in our week 3 recap. How about that?
That sounds good.
All right.
Circling that game. I didn't think I'd be circling a Browns-Titans game. But it's probably
that's the bellwether, man.
It's going to be an indicator game for us.
An indicator game. You know what? Let's highlight those on every schedule.
I mean, a good point by Birdie here too. You're also going to know how Schwartz is doing, making a difference with how that team is going to run, because it's a team that's going to want to throw it at you.
Yeah. Derrick Henry is going to get 30 carries. Is the run defense fixed? We shall find out. Great point. Yeah. God damn. We gotta circle. Well, let's just go through when we do the schedule before we click off of it. The last thing we'll do is kind of point to the bellwether game. I think that'll be a fun exercise. All right. Well, that does it for the bottom half of the AFC North.
We'll be back Wednesday with
the tone. Because of price, the tone on these 2 teams was rosy, which means you can almost guarantee the tone on the next 2 teams relative to price. I think we're going to be a little cool.
A little cooler.
As sad as it is, because goddamn are they good teams.
I know it's probably going to come down to, again, price and like your risk profile on what you think a team's range is, because certainly, and we'll get to it heavily, but like it's probably boom or bust for one of those teams when we talk about them Wednesday. Like I'm betting them to win the Super Bowl and win an MVP, or certainly not touching like a win total on the set of teams. So we'll get to it Wednesday.
Does Deshaun Watson have to go undefeated to win MVP?
Deshaun Watson. Can you imagine having to defend a vote? Like when they like, yeah, it was just, he was that good. Like, I wonder if somebody would come out and say he was so good, I'm willing to overlook, the part where he's probably, a criminal. Allegedly. We're not lawyers here.
Not a lawyer.
Settled out of court. So we don't get to say one way or the other, but we'll check back. And we'll see you Wednesday, guys. Hit the thumbs up on the way out. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. 1 month from today, we're playing football for real.
Yes.
I just saw this. Watson has to cure cancer. Mid-season, he has to come up with like a.
Are we sure even that would help?
I don't know. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.